So today we're going to talk about what simple things we can do to overcome the effects of hypervigilance. Hypervigilance, also known as or related to hyperarousal, is a symptom of PTSD. It's where a person is living in constant high alert. They're always anticipating or expecting the worst, some sort of danger, some sort of tragedy, some sort of calamity to come upon them. They're always anticipating, well, if the worst comes to worst, I think I'll do this. They're eyeing the doors and the windows, the exits. They're looking at people, trying to assess who in the room might be the threat, because they always feel threatened. They always believe that there's something that's going to happen that's going to take away their safety. Because they're always worried, they don't tend to trust people. And so they're not trusting. Hypervigilance is always being on the watch constantly for something bad to happen. And it can start to result in physical symptoms such as heart palpitations, a lack of sleep, a bad digestion. Hypersensitive people or hypervigilant people are hypersensitive to their surroundings, noticing every detail. Always thinking, though, in the negative for what is wrong with it and what could go wrong. They're constantly backing out of plans, backing away from situations, holding themselves back in life because they're anticipating a danger. And they're constantly ready to run or ready to fight because they expect the worst. Does this sound like you? Or perhaps you know someone like this. Well, hypervigilance is a result of trauma. We know that when something traumatic happens to a person, it can change the brain. In fact, it typically does make an impact in the brain. And so what happens is your subconscious mind is like your personal security guard. So when something terrible happens to you, it takes snapshots of everything around, not just the visuals, but what you hear, what you smell. And then it categorizes those things as what we know as triggers. So that when you see something like that again, or you hear something like that again, or you smell something like that again, it reminds you of the trauma and it puts you into hyperarousal. Hyperarousal is where your nervous system is heightened and you are on alert. But a hypervigilant person is rarely ever out of hyperarousal. They are constantly on alert. They are constantly afraid. They're constantly scared that something is going to happen because their brain is locked in trauma mode. Trauma mode on a scientific scale looks like the brainstem tip, the amygdala, which is a small little nut-sized shaped part of the brain, being hyperactive. And when all the electricity in the brain, all the energy is going to the amygdala expands and it's sucking up all the resources. The amygdala is what also controls the emotion so that you can have instant reactions, especially fear. The amygdala is what's controlling the outflow and the outputting of the chemicals, because all that's a part of a subconscious system. So the chemicals that are dropping in your body are according to what your brain is perceiving. And your brain is not always just perceiving what is literally there. Your brain could be getting triggered by what you're seeing because it's relating it back to a memory. So you're having frequent flashbacks based on something visual, based on something auditory, based on something you smell, or you're having emotional flashbacks based on a way a person stood, a facial expression. And they're bringing you back to this place of helplessness, how you felt when you were experiencing that trauma or during that traumatic time in your life. Survivors of complex trauma didn't just experience one terrible event. They may have grew up as prisoners of war, so to speak, behind enemy lines because their own parents were like their jailers, their captors, and were torturing them through emotional neglect, emotional abuse. And so they lived in a situation where they're constantly being subject to traumatic events to abuse, to things that would hurt them, that were scary, right in their own household. They couldn't even trust their caregivers. How can we expect them to come out and start trusting everyone else? They learned that in order to survive, they needed to anticipate that anything could go wrong at any time because their parents were not predictable. Parents weren't simply saying, here's the rule. If you break the rule, then there'll be consequences. No, the parents would say, you broke a rule before they even knew that that rule existed. And then the parents start breaking down and making the situation very unstable and unsafe for that child. And so that child learns, boy, I don't even know what all the rules are. I don't even know what all the triggers are for my parent. So I just need to always be ready. I need to always assume something's going to go wrong. Or people that were friends of the family who were supposed to be trustworthy, babysitters, turned out to be not so trustworthy. And so they learn that there is no one that they can trust. And they're living their lives in a state of hyperarousal. If you are living your life like this, our heart goes out to you. You're probably experiencing very high anxiety. You might experience depression because you feel like you don't know how you're ever going to get out of it. But know that this is caused by trauma. See, what that means is that it means that you're not broken. What it means is that this isn't an unfixable thing. This is not something you were born with. You are not a defective human. You didn't come off of the assembly line defective, unfixable, unchangeable. That's not how this works. You're in hyperarousal, hypervigilance, because this is how you've adapted to the traumas that you were experiencing. And you're trying to keep yourself safe. More accurately, the brain is trying to keep you safe. Your brain, your subconscious mind, which is the part of your mind that runs automatically without your help, is just doing its job. You're actually not broken. You're working exactly the way you're supposed to work when you experience a trauma. A quick note on trauma. When people ask what really constitutes a trauma, no one can answer that question because anything can constitute a trauma. If it's a violation of the self, a violation of your safety, a violation of your boundaries, a constriction of the self, it is a trauma. For one child, a fly landing on their arm could be traumatic. Whereas another child could be covered in flies and they don't feel or think anything about it. So what creates a trauma is not based on what actually happened, what is the event. It's based on how you perceive that event personally and how it's affected your nervous system. It's how that event affected you personally. And trauma doesn't end with the event, contrary to what some people seem to think. The trauma continues. The worst part is really after the event when you can't seem to get your life back because you are in this constant state of hyperarousal, hypervigilant, constantly feeling triggered, constantly having flashbacks, unable to sleep, having nightmares. So how do we solve this? Well, first thing again to state is it's solvable because you are not broken. You're just locked in the wrong mode. Sort of like your phone has an emergency mode. If you dial an emergency number on the phone, like 911, in the United States, your phone will actually lock out other applications and divert all of the energy in the phone to certain parts to make sure that your phone is able to stay with you and working through this emergency that you're apparently in. Likewise, in trauma, your brain diverts all of the energy to the amygdala, which is the fight, flight, freeze, fawn part of the brain, so that you're able to stay ready, stay alert, and make sure that you keep yourself as safe as possible. It's going to dump adrenaline into your body and cortisol into your body, and the cortisol is going to raise your blood pressure, and the adrenaline is going to allow you to suddenly be able to jump higher, run faster, punch harder, scream louder, do whatever it is you need to do, and to be able to do it quickly. That part of the mind does not lend itself to calm, logical thinking because we don't have time for calm, logical thinking when we're in an actual catastrophe, a disaster, an emergency situation. That part of the mind is a gift Be grateful for it. Be grateful to your brain, to your mind for trying to keep you safe, because that's all that's happening. You have been through something. You are traumatized. And your mind's trying to do its job. It's trying to keep you safe. You're not broken. That's how it's supposed to work. It's just that we need to get it out of trauma mode. And we do that by regulating the self. You have to regulate your nervous system. How do you do that? How do you regulate your nervous system? Well, there are so many different ways and techniques to do this. And I'm going to give you some today that you can use that are very powerful. Very powerful. So if you're taking notes, you want to jot these down. You want to meditate on these and start applying them in your life right now, especially if you're feeling like this hypervigilance thing is you, because we need to get out of hypervigilance. We need to get into living our lives, being able to fulfill our potential, being able to connect with others and to connect with nature, to connect with ourselves. There's a whole life to be lived when we can bring ourselves out of hyperarousal. And we need to know how to do this because bad things can happen. So we know already the brain is working properly. It's going to take you into your emergency mode. We just need to know how to pull out of it and how to stay out of it when you're not really in an emergency. Is this making sense? So how do we do this? Your brain gives you emotions based on perceptions. So one of the first things you need to do is control what you perceive. Control what you perceive. Let me give that to you again. All of your emotions hinge on perceptions. That's how the brain works. The brain is not actually giving you random emotions, although it may feel that way at times. But no, it's giving it to you based on actual perceptions. It's something that you thought about, something that you envisioned, something you're reminded about, some type of flashback. It's a perception inside the brain. It can be something you're seeing in your reality. It can be something you're watching on television. It can be something you're having a dream about. It can be something you're imagining that could happen, and you're feeling it inside your body due to the electrical chemical impulses that are being released, but all that's being triggered by the brain. Because of what? It's perceptions. It's all how we perceive the situation. Everything comes down to the perception of the situation. You need to control your perceptions. So what are you taking into the eyes and the ears? Many people who have successfully healed from hypervigilance have cut out watching the news. And listening to the news and reading the news. Why is this? Because for many, that sounds like a terrible idea. Well, if I don't know what's going on, how will I know how to keep myself? The news is about things that have already happened, supposedly, but it's being controlled by media companies and in some countries, the governments. The goal of the news is not to keep you safe. The goal of the news is to sell advertising space. That's how it actually works. I remember actually when I was a kid, I did some sort of internship, and I went to my local news station and I met the guy that I saw on TV every week. And the guy sits down and says, "You want to work in the news?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this would be amazing. I could be on television." And he said, "Think again." He said, you don't want to work in the news unless you're happy working for advertisers." And he was speaking completely over my head. And he starts talking about something that was happening in Libya. And then he says, "But we didn't talk last night on the news about what was happening in Libya. We talked about Kraft macaroni and cheese and different crafts you can make with macaroni and cheese. And we did that because that's what the network pushed, because Kraft is a very huge sponsor." I didn't know what any of this meant. I was just a kid, but I get it now. he, he seemed very jaded to me, but the reality was it's not as it seems. I know the news seems like they're presenting themselves like they're here to be your friend. They do not care about your mental health. What they care about is if they can get you to pay attention long enough so they can continue to push the advertising, the commercials. That's what they care about. So they design it. They have professionals, they have psychologists that work with them and media professionals that work with them to make the stories sound as scary as possible, as frightening and as close to you as possible. So that you will be in a state of arousal and you will continue to watch and you will be gripped on the edge of your seat. This means that they're taking stories that aren't even that scary and they're making them as scary as possible. And they're doing it on purpose, whether it's printed, whether it's radio, whether it's television. Please stop watching the news. You can keep abreast of what's going on because people will let you know. You can glance at headlines occasionally. You can put an alert on your phone for certain things, but you do not need to know what is happening every single day around the world because they are not reporting to you all the positives. They're not saying, oh, so-and-so lost their wallet and then someone brought their wallet and over here someone planted a nice garden and over here this person graduated from college. That's not what they're bringing to you. They're bringing tragedy and catastrophe and tragedy and catastrophe. If you're trying to heal, do not watch the news. Even myself, I do not watch the news. There is no need. Yes, I can occasionally catch up using the internet. We have the internet now. You can occasionally glance at something. If you're hearing about something, so there's some headline that's catching, that's fine. But cut out as much as possible the habit of watching that because it's only hurting you metaphysically. It's not there to help your mental health. Control what you perceive. We'll talk more about how to change our perceptions of certain events because it's also how we look at things that will help us to regulate the self. But our goal is to make sure our central nervous system, our feelings, and our thinking are calm. And you notice every time I do that, I always show it with breathing. Because one of your main techniques to keep your nervous system regulated is to breathe. When something seems scary, when you're feeling triggered, when you're having a flashback, you need to calm your nervous system by breathing. Brain scans show that when a person slows down their breathing and breathes deliberately from the diaphragm, the energy in the brain slows down. We have an amazing ability to regulate ourselves just by taking over our breathing. It's the simplest thing, but it's so important because what's happening in that moment is you are stepping in to the position of control. You have to step into the control position. Your subconscious mind is built as a helper to you. It is a helper. It is there to help you. It is not there to be your leader. Your subconscious mind is not there to be the boss. And we go through life and forget because we're on autopilot that we're supposed to be leading, not the feelings, not the emotions, not the subconscious responses and the habits. Us, we are supposed to be leading. We're supposed to be making the decisions. We're supposed to be calling the shots. And we can only do that when we are mindful. So we need to stop, we need to pause, and we need to meditate. And the first thing we want to meditate on is our breathing. So when you're in a situation, you're at work and your boss walks in and you start to get nervous, first thing you need to do is regulate immediately. As soon as something happens that's bringing you up, regulate. Just breathe. It's imperceptible to people around you when you're just taking it in, letting it out, and you're staying very calm. It starts to regulate your nervous system right from that very moment. Brings down your physiology. There's little techniques that we can do, but ultimately you want to keep your physiology at a nice, low, even calm at all times. So on the physical level, you have your breathing that you need to control. You need to do meditation and be aware of your body. Make sure that there's no muscles that are tensed up in your body that don't need to be tensed up. Let's do that meditation together right now. So as long as you're not operating any heavy machinery, just take a breath with me and just breathe. If you close your eyes for a moment, become aware of your body. Start from your head and do a scan. Like picture your body's doing a scan from the head all the way to the toes. Are you noticing any pain, any stress points? Is there something you can do to make your position more comfortable? Allow each muscle in your body to relax. Let your neck relax. Let your shoulders relax. Your chest. Relax your stomach. Relax your waist, your legs. Let as much that you can allow to fall limp to fall limp. And now imagine you can scan the inside of your body and all of the organs in the body. And imagine all of the positive energy, the white blood cells and the immune system working to keep each part of your body healthy. Okay, come back to me. So now, can you imagine doing a nice quick, that was a minute, a nice quick meditation like that at several points throughout your day, 5 times a day, just taking 1 minute, just doing that scan to bring your physiology down. Now, with your eyes open, notice the things around you. Recognize your safety. One of the things we can do is focus on an object, like I'm looking at a lamp right now. And I can recognize that the lamp is there, it's solid, it's been there every single day. I'm in a safe place right now, aren't I? I'm home, I'm in my apartment. There's no one here right now. I am safe. This is a part of controlling the perception of the mind. When we live in trauma, we are replaying what happened in the past that was traumatic, or we are replaying what could happen in our future that would be traumatic. Those perceptions are perceived by the subconscious, and then you're receiving chemicals based on them. We need to change the perception. No more replaying what happened. We've been through that. No creating scenarios that have not happened yet. We will handle those scenarios when we get there. We can't do anything about what could happen now. We will handle it when we get there. Right now, we are safe. Learn to tell that to yourself. I'm safe right now. I'm cool. Everything's all right. Speak to yourself in a reassuring way. Keep yourself calm by what you tell yourself. And since you're not watching the news anymore, take in more media that is calming and good for the soul. Things that are upbuilding. Instead of watching all the movies where everyone gets killed, or all the documentaries about everyone that got killed, let's change what's in our queue on our streaming to things that are happy and pleasant and have happy endings. Does it really matter? Yes, because I understand that you as the conscious person knows what's fiction and what's history, but your subconscious doesn't know the difference. The subconscious mind will give you the chemicals based on what you're watching, and you will go through your life affected by what you've seen. You know it's the truth. If you've ever watched a horror film, it changes the way you look at everything. And it takes a long time for those perceptions to go away. Sometimes we're affected, scarred for life because of something we watched for entertainment. Don't do that to yourself. Put in images that are good and positive. And the best stuff is really for free. Walk outside of your door. Enjoy the sunshine. Look at the flowers. Observe the insects. Watch how the bees go from flower to flower, right? Sometimes we look at bees like they're dangerous, but you can go right up to a bee, you can watch it, it won't bother you at all. Isn't that the truth? If you watch a bee right on the flowers, you put your face right up next to it. It's not going to bother you at all. It's through these processes that we learn how safe we really are and what the real world is like. Because reality, when you're hyper vigilant, your reality that you're creating for yourself, you're creating a personal reality that's even worse than the world we live in. And I have to give you credit for that, because the world we live in already has plenty of dangers and problems. But you've created a personal reality that's even worse. Don't do that. Do not do that. So let's focus on actual reality and change our perception. If you have a perception, bad things have always happened, bad things are always going to happen. Let's switch that perception to something that's more accurate. Think about it for a moment. When is the last time something bad actually happened to you? If you've eliminated from your life the abuser, if you're moved out and moved away from the abuser in your life, then you'll find that you're able to go long stretches between something actually bad happening and the next one. The majority of life is actually calm. Day to day, moment to moment, the reality is you have more calm, safe, peaceful moments than you have traumatic, actual traumas that are happening to you. You're not being attacked 24 hours a day. You're just picturing yourself being attacked 24 hours a day. When you decide not to picture yourself being attacked 24 hours a day, then you're able to live 24 hours of peace every day until an actual catastrophe arises. Well, but wait, won't I not be ready for the actual catastrophe if I'm constantly living in peace? If I'm constantly just deluding my mind to see the world as a safe place, and I'm not ready for what could really happen to me when that real thing happens, won't I not be ready for it? Won't I not be able to keep myself safe? Well, think about that for a moment. Does staying in a constant state of fear actually keep you safe if something were to really happen? What is that preventing? Well, but no, Roman, you don't understand. See, if I'm watching, then that way I can kind of anticipate the situation and then I can get out of there. We should be vigilant. We should keep on the watch, but we don't need to be hyper vigilant so that our nervous system is not matching the actual surroundings we're in. You're not supposed to be having panic attacks just walking down the aisles of a grocery store. So it's not working. What you're actually doing is you're hurting yourself worse, because you're living in trauma moment to moment, every single day. Whereas I'm living in peace. And then when the actual emergency situation happens, my body and mind is healthy to be able to deal with the emergency. Whereas if you're not regulating yourself, you're not actually healthy to be able to deal with the trauma when the trauma does arise, because you've stayed so long in hyper arousal, fight, flight, and freeze. You're asking yourself, I don't even know if this is an actual emergency right now, because I'm always in an emergency state. I don't even know how to act right now. Your brain has now at this time developed maladaptive coping mechanisms. so that you're fighting at times where you shouldn't fight, and you're getting kicked off of planes, and they're calling you a Karen because you're freaking out in situations where you're not supposed to be freaking out. Or you're running away at times where you don't need to run away. So your loved ones and your partners are like, where'd mom go? Where did my wife go? Where did my husband go? Like, why does he always run away like this? It doesn't match the scenario. I had a friend who was traumatized. He was a male. He was a friend. I'll call him Billy. And Billy, one day we got into a discussion in the parking lot. So I guess we were arguing a little bit. We're in a parking lot of a church, and Billy, instead of being able to stay regulated and converse or just say, hey guys, I don't want to talk anymore or something like that, Billy gets mad. He gets in his car and he drives the car across the lawn in an effort to get, there's normal ways to get out of a parking lot, but he drives it across the church lawn and there's tire tracks. And we're all just sitting there. Billy looks to us like Billy has a problem, right? That's what we're doing. We're looking crazy when we're constantly in that hyper state of arousal. We need to learn to be regulated day in and day out so that we can handle real life and enjoy the real life, to live to our potential, to live in health, peace, metaphysical prosperity. So we need to get rid of the maladaptive belief. If I'm constantly on the watch, I'm going to keep myself safe. And we need to look at the true belief. If I'm constantly on the watch, that's the biggest danger to me. Unhealthy hyperarousal can literally kill. High blood pressure kills. Anxiety causes conditions, so many conditions in persons, more medical conditions than I can name. It's not keeping you safe. That's the opposite of safety. Going into physical illness is the opposite of safety. And the only thing worse than going into physical illness is going into mental illness. We do not want to lose our minds. Our minds are the only thing we have. It's the most important, most valuable faculty of our being is our mind. You don't want to sacrifice the mind when you've already lost so much to the trauma in the first place. So make the decision to say, I will not also sacrifice my mental health. I will stop the loss here because that trauma has already taken so much from me. I'm not going to give it anymore. I'm stopping the loss here and now. I'm going to apply every technique I learned to regulate myself, and I'm going to stay calm as a person. I'm going to be serene, at peace. Here's some cool techniques you can use besides your breathing. Rule of 7 seconds. Rule of 7 seconds dictates, before you respond to anything, pause 5 to 7 seconds. That'll give you time to breathe. It gives you time to activate your conscious mind, the cerebral cortex. And so that way you're able to respond as your higher self, as the best self. Rule of 7 seconds. You take control by responding as the higher self, by pausing before you give your initial response, because your initial response is the regrettable one. That's where we end up driving across the lawn, or we end up getting recorded, losing our temper in a Walmart. Pause and think. Give yourself 5 to 7 seconds to allow your whole brain to activate. Divert some of that electricity, some of that energy into the other parts of the brain. You feel angry? Let it pass. 7 seconds. You feel like you're going to cry? Let it pass. 7 seconds. Do not lose control of your physiology. You control that. That belongs to you. Here's another cool technique. You can take your hand and while you're breathing, you just rub your hand like this. And give yourself permission to yawn. And it's tiring. I can't do this too much because you'll lose me. And I'll end up sleeping here. But that's a nice technique that you can use to, it's very calming to your physiology. It just like brings you down into this really calm, almost sleepy state. Another cool one you can use is you can take your fingers and you put them in your ears and then you go in circles. And it creates like this this white noise. It's a good one to do if you're laying down. And for whatever reason, when we get that white noise, it calms the chatter of the brain and it allows us to just like calm down. I have a video on my YouTube that you can take a look at that talks about tapping. And so you can use tapping for anxiety or when you feel angry or upset. Anything that's throwing you into hyperarousal, it's all about controlling the self before you do or say something you regret. Our ability to re-regulate after a trauma is a skill that we need to learn. So it's not just the physiology, but we have to learn to control the mental processes. We do that by changing the way we speak to ourselves and changing what we focus on. We have to change the way we speak to ourselves and change what we focus on. So imagine you go into a car accident, you're on the highway and a car swerves in front of you. You think, oh my gosh, we could have gotten in a car accident. Bam, you go into hyperarousal. That's proper for a moment. But what you have to do is remain calm, even though something dangerous just happened. So you have to say, ooh, okay, what just happened there was dangerous. But instead of going, oh my gosh, and playing in your mind the perception of a car accident, you instead play in your mind the safety of the moment. Is everyone okay? Okay, got control. Let me slow back. I'm going to get away from this car, right? And you just control yourself and control your physiology by controlling your perception, which is focusing on what you control. You're safe. When you focus on what you cannot control, everything falls apart. Because there's so much, there's an infinite void of what you cannot control. You can't control these other people, these other drivers, people you're in relationships with, the world around you, the weather. There's so much you can't control. If you focus, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. Our brains can't handle that. You're made to handle you. So focus on you and you'll say, wow, I can regulate myself a lot better when I just focus on me. Because this is all I'm supposed to focus on. If you have a child to take care of, then you expand that focus to me and my child. But that's it. There's nothing else you're supposed to focus on. You only control yourself. So make sure you're meditating on the truth. The truth is every day something bad doesn't happen. Every day, generally speaking, things are safe, calm, and normal. The truth is you can be vigilant and you should be vigilant. You should be on the watch. You should be careful, but you should not be obsessed with all of the possibilities of what could go wrong because you can't prevent anything wrong by doing that. That is dangerous to you. A vigilant person who is calm and serene trusts in their own ability to handle the situation if the situation were to arise. So you're going around saying, I can't trust anything, I can't trust anyone. The problem is that you're not trusting yourself. You're not trusting in your ability to be able to handle something when it comes up. You're not that child anymore. You're not that helpless victim anymore. You're an adult with resources. You will be able to handle whatever comes your way, if it were to come. We should avoid doing things that are dangerous. You know what dangerous activities are. That doesn't mean avoid everything in your life because you've categorized it as dangerous. But something that's a needless risk, you should avoid needless risks because we don't need to keep ourselves into a state of hyperarousal. But understanding that you're being smart and you're being strategic also means that you're taking strategic risks. I am going to leave my house and go to the grocery store. Although there is a risk, it is a strategic risk because I get food that way. I am going to continue to eat at restaurants, even though it's risky, because I can enjoy myself that way and I don't impede my social life that way. Is this making sense? Take strategic risks. I am going to continue to put myself out at work and speak up and share my ideas and tell my boss when I don't want to work late and when I have a boundary. Although it is risky, I'm creating a reality for myself, which is a world that I want to be in. Diffuse your triggers through exposure. Don't say to yourself, roses scare me, so nobody get me roses. Call all your friends, send them all letters. Nobody bring any roses. Roses scare me. Don't do that. You're limiting your life that way. Expose yourself to roses again. Walk outside, find a patch of roses, stand 20 feet away. Allow the anxiety to spike. Control your breathing. Let it pass through. When you're calm, take a few steps and stand 15 feet away. Allow your anxiety to spike. Breathe. Once you're calm again, stand 10 feet away. Allow the anxiety to spike. Breathe, regulate, do your hand thing, talk on your cell phone. Control the self. Once you're calm again, stand 5 feet away. Repeat process, 2 feet away. Repeat process, right next to the roses. Repeat process, holding your hand over top of the rose. Repeat process, touching the rose quickly and pulling away. Repeat process, laying your hand on the rose and leaving it there. Allow the anxiety to spike. Let it pass through you. You realize you're safe. Once you feel safe again, pick a rose, pull it close to the nose. Next thing you know, you're at the store buying a dozen roses for yourself. You sit them right there on your kitchen counter. You have diffused the trigger. You have cured yourself of the phobia. Utilizing this process of exposure is how we're able to regain control. If you're having frequent flashbacks, you can use this process with the flashbacks by, in a controlled and safe environment, bringing to mind the situation. Allow the anxiety to spike, pass through, move forward. Next step, until the so-called trigger is no longer triggering to you. You have control. Make it your decision to take control of your life, to take back your life again. Your thoughts are yours. So can you reverse the damage in your brain? Yes. The brain has neuroplasticity, which means you can mold it, you can control it, you can shape it, you can change it. That's what it means. This is the best news about the brain since we learned that brains existed. You can change your brain. Well, but it has damage from this and that. It's okay, because doctors literally can take out half of a brain of an epilepsy patient, and that person is able to recover and live the rest of their life with half of their brain and learn to redo and do everything they used to do with half of their brain. If you can continue to live your life to the full with half of your brain, then what you've got left, ma'am or sir, you're good. You got enough in there that you can shape it, use it, change it, and heal it. Absolutely. Every single day, be doing your meditative stretching, stretching out. Feel the body, learn the body, know the body, do your stretches, do your exercise, 30 minutes a day, exercise, 30 minutes a day, cumulative meditation. This can be a few minutes in the morning, a few minutes at night, a few minutes during the noon, but you got to get in plenty of meditation. Spend time alone until you love being alone. Being alone is not a punishment. It is an opportunity to get to know the coolest person you will ever meet, a being that is very powerful, and to access your personal power. And believe that life exists between the tragedies, between the inevitable, terrible events that are going to occur in any human's life. Between those things, there is days, there is weeks, there is years of peace. And during that time period, if you are not living in future dramas and traumas that you're creating or replaying the past, you can be living in a beautiful present where you are in control, where you are healthy, where you are happy. And the chemicals that are getting released in your system, like serotonin and oxytocin, will help to balance you out. And you'll feel calm and you'll be cool and serene. And other people will be drawn to you because they want to have that energy too. You can have genuine connections and be your authentic self. You can live your life in a way you've never lived it before. Healing is not about going back to how you were before the injury or the trauma. Healing is about becoming who you always could have been. I invite you, reach your potential, heal.